I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Today's guest is a writer, director, producer, just a storyteller, a really good one. Morgan Spurlock is on the show today, and we talk about a lot of things. We cover so many areas. We start off, and he tells me about a specific time when he was sitting in a bar with a potential investor, and they were drinking beers and drinking some more beers, and all of a sudden, the investor writes him a check for $250,000 at the bar. Morgan puts it in his sock, and he wakes up the next day and he tells us what happened. He also shares a pretty good hangover cure. Morgan, you probably know from Supersize Me, the documentary that he released in 2004. Since then, he has released so many other projects. And given that he is a professional storyteller and a very good one, we talk a little bit about what's going on in our world right now and how through the power of storytelling, we can influence. We can also connect, maybe spend some time walking in other people's shoes, and just the shift in media in general. So that's another thing we talk about quite a bit, this paradigm shift that I'm constantly studying in media is happening so fast, given that Morgan works in this world and his projects are distributed through a lot of different types of mediums. He has some thoughts on that too. I ask him, if you were protesting something, if you were marching, what would your sign say? How can people be more effective? So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Morgan. I sure did. And we'll see you on the flip side. Before we hop into this episode, let me fill you in on a little secret of mine. That's Headspace. It's a guided meditation app, and I never imagined that doing something for 10 minutes a day could increase my quality of life so much. I've always struggled with knowing when to make things happen versus when to let things happen. Sometimes things go very well when I push on the gas, and sometimes not so much. It gets me into trouble. Headspace has helped me with learning how to trust my intuition. And I've tried meditation off and on for years. It's never stuck, but this time it has. I've made a very intentional shift in my morning routine, and that's to wake up, have my coffee, do Headspace, journal, and then I check my email, my social media, all of my devices. It's been a big shift, but great result. My aunt used to say, don't let anything rent space in your head for free. That's valuable real estate. Headspace allows me to be a much better landlord of my thoughts, especially first thing in the morning. You can go to headspace.com/whynotnow for a free trial. And if you stick around to the end of the show, I'll tell you how you can get a month for free. Morgan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Excited to have you on. And let's hop right in the spirit of why not now. Can you think of a time where you had to ask yourself the question? Let's zoom in. Let's dissect it.
Production company right now, Warrior Poets. And before Warrior Poets, I had a company. It was started back in 1999, a company called the Interactive Consortium. And it was a terrible name. It was an awful name. But the whole notion behind the Interactive Consortium, this is in the middle of the con. Right. And that's what we called it for short. So we called it the Consortium, or the Con for short. And this was 1999. The internet boom was exploding everywhere around us. All these new companies popping up. And I'd been working independently, as a director, as a producer on any job I could. And I'd just come off the road as being like the face of a national promotional tour for Sony Electronics, where I started, doing on-camera stuff for ESPN and announcing and directing more stuff for Sony Electronics, these big kind of promotional videos and everything. And I said, you know what? I need to start my own company. And we had just done a show called The Instant Show for Sony, where it was like the first live variety show on the internet. We did that in like 1997, 98. And so I said, I need to start this company now, or else I'm never going to do it. And I wrote a business plan. I remember I sat in my house over Christmas 98 to 99 of me just like sitting in my underwear in a robe, writing this business plan for 4 days straight. And then starting the new year, I went out and just started trying to raise money for the company. And the whole idea behind it of the con was we were going to create programming online, short form video content that then we would springboard off to film or television. A very novel idea back in 1999. And so we started going out trying to raise money for this. And as I started getting more people on the hook, people were really interested. And then the bubble burst in March of 2000. And that was kind of the first kind of real stock market readjustment where everything tanked. Everybody suddenly was protecting their own investment. Nobody wanted to invest anything. And I was literally felt like I was back to square one. And then there was one guy, a guy named Martin Garvey, who called me and said, well, meet me uptown. And I went and I met him uptown, and we sat in this bar and we just drank Guinness after Guinness after Guinness. He had just lost a ton of money in kind of this stock market readjustment. And he said, listen, I don't know anything about production. I don't know anything about movies. I don't know anything about TV. He goes, the only thing I invest in is people. And he goes, I believe, I don't know if any of this will work. He goes, but I believe in you. And he pulled out his checkbook and he wrote me a check for $250,000 in that bar. And I was like, oh my God, like this is, as I said, is this real? He goes, yeah, you should put that check away. And so I folded it up, and I was so scared. I was so scared of losing the check that I folded it up and I put it in my sock. And so I stuffed his $250,000 check in my sock. And you ask yourself, how, if somebody gives you a check for $250,000, how long do you sit in the bar and drink with them? And the answer to that question is for as long as they want.
I was just going to ask, actually, how many Guinness beers did you have before that check was written? Because there would be a really interesting graph of kind of pre and post check writing, and then where that check gets stored in the sock.
Infinitely more pints were had after that check was written, but there were probably a couple beforehand. But it was amazing. That one check, that one guy, that one moment changed everything. That guy really, I think, lit the fuse in a big way of, us being able to start that company, of us being able to make our first show, of selling it to TV, and I think having a real hand and kind of pushing me up, up the ladder to where I am today.
That's fascinating. It could be imagine if you could build a project around that scene or that story. I know you're nonfiction, but it's like this epic moment in your life. And so you wake up the next morning. What happened? Were you just kind of thinking, okay, this is reality? What did you do right away?
Well, the biggest thing was I took some aspirin because
I was going to ask about that.
After mini Guinness, I needed a little headache cure. And I tell you the best headache cure, which a lot of people don't know about, and being a hillbilly from the South, it was something I discovered long ago. It's these things called Goody's headache powders. And so what Goody's headache powder is, and like you would see them on like NASCAR commercials. And so it's these packets of like powder. It's almost like ground up aspirin. And I think it has a little bit of caffeine in it. And so you basically pour it in water and you drink it. And it is the greatest hangover cure ever. And it's one of those things that I still stand by to this day. So that morning I got up, I had a Goody's headache powder. And this is not a commercial for Goody's headache powder. I'm just a fan. And so I took that. And then I basically said to everybody, I said, well, we got this check after months of us chasing this. And we'd already had like 4 or 5 people that were working in the company because we were like, this is going to happen. So now we can actually start paying people But we realized we couldn't do everything. And this is the other advice I give to filmmakers is you can't do everything at once. You can't be everything to everybody. You can't create everything you want within a company immediately. We had to pick one thing. And we said we have enough money to really focus on one show and one idea and do it really, really well. And I said, we need to make a game show. Now, and the whole reason behind that, and I'll take you back to 2000. So now we've gotten this check in April of 2000. And at that time, there was no reality television. It didn't exist. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't even a part of anybody's conversation. The show that had just premiered on television that had exploded was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So now here's this game show that had gone from one night a week to 2 nights a week on ABC to 3. And I think by the time we got the check, they were stripping it. I feel like it was on 4 days a week. Like they were milking every dollar out of this show. And it was huge. Like it was such a big show. And so I said game shows. Game shows are going to come back. And so we created this game show called I Bet You Will, this incredibly low-rent version of a show where I would go out on the street and bet people to do silly things for money right on the spot. And that was the idea. And that was kind of what we launched, our first show and kind of our company out of.
Wow. It's interesting to hear kind of the reality of what happens behind the scenes too. And the evolution, just thinking back when first there was no reality TV. Now, of course, then there was this emerge.
Now there's too much reality TV.
Yeah, now we're reeling it back in, and we're back to all these original series and
less reality. How can I just get less reality in the world? Period. Just less reality altogether.
Yes, this is why we created probably TV in the beginning. Let's go back to the actual reason why.
More escapism.
Yes, get me out of here. Get me out of here. So you've experienced these moments of droughts, and John Chu has been on the show before, and he's talked to about kind of this process that goes on where your ego is in kind of one space, you get maybe out of school, or you think you're going to get a project that's greenlit, and then all of a sudden something changes. The why not now, and having done a little bit of research before Supersize Me, would you say you have a decision-making framework that you revert back to in those times, or is it just kind of part of your DNA?
I mean, I feel like it's probably always been something that I've done. I grew up in a house where my parents encouraged us to take chances and take risks and do the things that we wanted to do. The one thing that would never happen in our house is they would never let us quit. Like if you started something, you had to see it through. If you started playing baseball at the beginning of the season, you didn't get to quit in the middle. And I was the youngest of 3 ballet dancing brothers, like the most uncool thing to be in West Virginia where I grew up. Like it was amazing. But my oldest brother was a dancer. My middle brother was a dancer. And so ultimately I wanted to do what they did because, you kind of follow your brothers around. And I just think that my parents were incredible, independent thinkers. They didn't care what anybody else thought about them. They just wanted to raise kids to be, I think, independent thinkers as well, and be passionate and love life and to not be afraid to kind of be ourselves. And I think that means everything.
Very interesting. And here we are, in 2017. I find it to be such a critical and fascinating time in media, especially given the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
When you look at the future of media and you look at the past and the film business, but also this kind of all of a sudden surfacing of pent-up energy we're seeing with people wanting to mobilize their voices and protests or whatever it may be, where do you think we're headed? And then you add into the formula of this kind of curveball of alternative facts and or fake news. And given this is your swim lane of storytelling and nonfiction, so curious to kind of to hear your thoughts on this current situation.
A lot of critics would say I've been in the fake news business for years. So I think
I guess it's all relative, right? Define fake.
I think it's an exciting time. It's a confusing time for a lot of people. It's an overwhelming time. It's an emotional time. But I mean, at the end of the day, listen, it's a great time to be in the storytelling business. It's a great time to be a documentary storyteller. I mean, I think now there's never been a more important time, especially when you look at big media and kind of the way they're being attacked, and the fact that you can kind of be this outside voice, that is outside of the criticism, I think is important. And I think that we need those voices. We need these people who are operating outside of kind of the traditional media landscape to help guide us, to give us the truth, to help us find the facts and give us a better picture of the world. The one thing that I think documentaries do, and what I'm really proud of the stuff that we create here at Warrior Poets is, I mean, I think there's a real ability to drive empathy through storytelling and through documentaries, whether it be a movie or a TV show or a digital series. I think the ability for something to kind of open up that door and let somebody into someone else's world and give them the chance to kind of walk a mile in someone else's shoes, no matter, even if it's just a vicarious one through this kind of television immersion or this video immersion, I think is huge. And I think it's so important today. I mean, everything is so divisive and we're so divided. We need to understand that ultimately we do care about so many more of the things equally than we do about things that divide us. And I think that we forget that all the time.
Agreed. And when we see these, these marches or protests,
yeah,
and or actually flipping back to your work and sharing a story and having the awareness come to a very important topic, when you do that, are you thinking in your mind, reverse engineering, how can I mobilize these people? Or are you more thinking, how can I best tell the story and let them figure out that on their own? And do you think that's evolving?
I think it's story first. I mean, it's story first. I think you have to tell a good story. You have to figure out a way to tap into people's emotions top line. And I think then you can worry about, oh, now here's what I want this to accomplish, or here's what this is going to change. We don't go into anything saying, this is going to have this kind of an impact, because I think that's the wrong way to produce things. I think it has to be rooted in the character or the story, and that emotional hook more than anything. I mean, those are what wins the day. The things that, years ago, there was a great producer, Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer's old partner, did an interview, and he said, if you show me a movie that makes you think, I'll show you a failure. He goes, but show me a movie that makes you feel, and you'll have a success. And so everything we do is how do we continue to just tap in to that raw emotion, especially now we are so raw emotionally in this country. How can we motivate you and make you understand why you feel the way you do, or why someone else feels the way they do, in a way that isn't a lecture or isn't hectoring, but at the same time is entertaining. I mean, that's the real goal.
And if that's the goal, and you were, let's say you were advising people who wanted to share their voices and stand up for what they believe, and let's just say it's a march. Are there any constructive criticisms you would give to, here you are, you're getting ready to head out, you have maybe a blank sign, when you're going to share your voice, any advice you would give to how people can be a little more effective with standing up for what they believe?
I feel a lot of times, like when you see a lot of marches and you see a lot of the protests, it is very much a line that's being drawn in the sand of like, I believe this and you don't, or this is what we stand for and you don't. And I think that it's an ineffective way to get a message across. And I think that ultimately part of what you want to do is through these actions is win people over to what you're trying to say, or bring people in. And I think you have to kind of understand where they're coming from and what speaks to them simultaneously. And part of what your sign should do, or what your march should do, or your mission should be not only to speak to what you believe, but in some way speak to what they believe, so that common ground can be laid early. And ultimately you can start to, I think, turn it not just from a mission, but into a real movement. For it to be a movement, you have to start to bring in people who are on the fringe and not just this core group that already believes, what you do.
I've heard you say, and listening to your interview with Tim Ferriss, I'm a big fan of his podcast, and that was such a great conversation that you two had. You talked about not being afraid to show your scars. And can you share a little bit about that and how maybe it goes into your work and has benefited you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is early on, whether it was Supersize Me or whether it was 30 days, it all came down to being honest. Like, I have to tell you how I'm feeling when I'm conflicted, especially something that I'm in. Like, I have to be really honest with you, and even the people that we shoot, we want them to be honest with us as they're sharing their stories, with the viewer, with you, whoever's watching the movie. And I think that there was some great advice that a friend of mine gave to me, and he said, you have to show your scars. You have to keep doing that, because that is kind of who you are. And that's what our work is. And I think that it was at a time when I really needed to hear that. I think it was at a time when we were at a place within our company and kind of within our production cycle of potentially pivoting and going and like we started to produce more commercial fare. But it was one of those where the core idea of this is that we make stuff that speaks to people, I think, in a different way. We can give you life lessons without it feeling like medicine. I think we produce stuff that talks to you in a worldly way that kind of shows you what else is happening outside of the bubble that you may live in. And I think we do that because there is real respect for the stories we tell and the people that are in them, but also I think just because we're willing to not shy away from difficult things. And I think a lot of times, especially today, I mean, with everything that's happening in the world, we want to shy away from difficult conversations, and we can't anymore. I just think we can't ignore the fact that just because we have differences doesn't mean we can't talk about them. And I think that we have to confront all those things head on.
Yeah, it's kind of those healthy tension conversations again, and critical conversations. And you do so well at communicating that through your work. If let's say there are aspiring filmmakers that are listening, and they're at that point of why not now? They're at that point of asking themselves a question. They've moved beyond the dreaming. They're ready to do. What pieces of advice would you have for them? Their very first steps.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is, one, you have to be true to you. You have to be true to your voice. You don't want to be making something that isn't you, just because you think it'll sell or just because you've seen something like it on television and this is what people are doing. I think you have to understand what those stories are that you want to tell as a filmmaker, and double down on that and really stand by that. And it's in those moments that I think you'll continue to have real epiphanies. I think you'll have real breakthroughs. You'll have a lot of breakdowns simultaneously. I think that there will be times when you will hit walls, but out of every breakdown comes a breakthrough. And I think you have to be willing to stand by who you are and what you believe in. And out of that, I think, comes real inspiration.
So with media, just different media mix, and what are your thoughts on kind of the different distribution types? Social media, you have film, TV. Are you super pointed toward VR? I've heard you talk a little bit about that. Your thoughts on podcasts, just kind of the most effective mediums right now, in your opinion?
Well, I think this is the exciting thing right now, is that there's so many places to tell stories. I think that what's happened in the explosion of the media landscape is that now I can make a 90-minute or 2-hour feature-length movie and find a home for it, or I can make a half-hour short that could end up being distributed digitally. I can make even shorter form content that people can consume, whether it be on their tablets or on their computers or on their phones when they're on the go. I can interact immediately with people, through social media, and people can ask me questions and vice versa. I mean, I think the connection that we have to an audience now has never been more immediate and more intimate. And simultaneously, I think we've never had the ability to create so much content so quickly and reach so many people in such a short amount of time. And I think that's what's really exciting, because it does give us the ability now to tell stories everywhere, and in a variety of ways, and have people enjoy it and consume it, wherever works for them. Because it used to have to be, if you're going to watch a movie, you'd have to be, in your house on your couch at 10 o'clock, because that was when the movie started. And now it's not like that anymore. It's like, it's infinitely more empowering to the consumer. It's more empowering to you and I. And it's really empowering, I think, to the creative storytellers, because it just gives us so many options and exciting places to do what we love to do.
Switching gears for a moment.
Sure.
How do you keep your mind healthy, Morgan?
I drink a lot of coffee. I don't know if that's healthy. I think the biggest thing that I do to try and keep my mind healthy is I try to exercise. It's never as much as I want to, but it's going for a walk. It's going for a run in the middle of winter. It's going to the gym. For me, like, exercise helps me get rid of so much baggage, like so much emotional baggage, so much mental baggage. And I can really begin my day with a real clarity of purpose and a clarity of vision. I have a real understanding of my intention at that point. And I'm a real believer in intention in everything you do. So for me, I think, like, being able to dump, all of kind of the excess waste out of my body in any way I can is always really important. And I think we don't realize how much we carry with us, from the day before, the week before, the month before. And the more that you can personally find ways to let that go is really I mean, for me, it's just something I couldn't live without.
I just saw, actually, it was a bit ago, a snapshot of what the brain looks like if you've been sitting, for X amount of time, or if you've been taking a walk for 20 minutes, and just the difference physiologically. And we feel it, but to see it scientifically is sometimes just what it takes to convince you that it's doing what people say it does. Do you find yourself writing a lot of notes when you or stopping and taking notes on your phone, or when you're exercising?
I do. I try not to, just because I feel like that it puts me right back in the place, like staring at a screen and not not doing what I should be doing. But there are I will have. It's almost like there's all the pistons start firing, and so while I'm in the middle of like the treadmill or I'm on the exercise bike, that I'll have to write something down because I just something has just clicked, and I'll get an idea. I'll have this exciting moment of something that's connected to a project we're working on. And I feel like I'm infinitely more, I have a much better tunnel vision, in those moments of like real kind of exercise enlightenment.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I have I just got a treadmill disc not too long ago, and on the treadmill desk,
You have a treadmill desk, so you
yeah.
stand at your walk on it.
Yes. And it's the most amazing thing at times, but also it's kind of, that feeling, or that feeling that you get like when you've maybe had a couple of drinks and every idea sounds amazing and you can't wait to just do it. It's like there are no bad idea zone.
This is amazing.
I'm genius. Here I go. Can't wait to get started. Yes. I feel like there's a sense of that sometimes on this treadmill desk, and I'm not cocktailing on the treadmill desk. So it's, yes, that idea, taking notes. And then, a couple hours later, I've come back to earth, and I have to sift through my kind of drunken notes. But the stimulation, though, I guess back to the point I was making, I used to have a company, and we would intentionally do walking meetings because it was just so much better. And so it's kind of a thing now in the corporate world where people will schedule walking meetings. I think that's super smart. But anyway, is there a why not now?
I'm gonna have to rip off that walking meeting idea. That's such a good idea.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And you do get to that point where you're wanting to take notes on your phone, either because of tactically you need to remember something or an idea comes. So it's smart to have the walking meeting if you can in places where there isn't a lot of traffic, or in New York City, it'd be a little tricky, but maybe you could go to the park or something.
That's right.
It's so, and you're quicker, when you're done talking about the subject at hand, it's time to stop walking. And it's a really interesting vibe that happens when you're doing walking meetings. When you think about this concept of why not now, and I'm sure there are millions of ideas that you have rolling around in the back of your mind, but is there anything that comes to mind that maybe it's time to get your why not now on with a certain project, with a certain idea? Maybe it's personal, who knows?
There's a few things. I mean, I think that there's so many. I feel like I have so many why not nows. Like I just had a baby who's now 8 months old.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I have two amazing boys, and it's one of those where it's like I just want to be in better. I got to get in better shape. It's like I need to run more. I need to eat better. So like there's always that why not now in my life. There's always like the work why not nows of now I should be doing a scripted movie now. It's like after all these docs, now's the time to do a narrative movie and a narrative TV show. So there's always that driving us. And I tell you the greatest why not now, and this is such a simple thing from a work standpoint. I guess I separate them. There's a personal life, and then there's the work one. So there's the why not now one for my life, especially with my two boys, is why not now? Why can't I find a better work-life balance where I'm home more with my kids? I'm 46 years old. I should be able to be home for dinner. I should be able to like spend time with them and have those moments and still be able to run a successful company, and still be able to do that. So I think for me, that's the big kind of work-life balance push for me is like, I want to be very present in my kids' lives. My 10-year-old who still loves to spend time with me. I want to be able to spend as much time with him. It's such a priority in my life. And then with his brother, I want him to see and be a part of and want to know is that his father's a part of the family all the time. I grew up in a house where my father worked all the time. He didn't get home till like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night all the time. And I just don't want to have that. I don't want to be that. And I have been for so long. And after I got divorced from my wife, I made my son and our relationship such a priority, and it's been amazing. And so I think that for me, I want to continue that with our new child and kind of with building our family unit. So for me, that's the personal why not now. And then you're going to love the work why not now, as I just had a meeting yesterday after years of everybody, making these amazing podcasts. Somebody said, "Why aren't you doing a podcast?" And I was like, "You're right. Why am I not doing a podcast, Amy Jo Martin? I want to do one too.
I want to play.
I want to get in the sandbox." And so I just met with somebody yesterday about potentially doing a podcast. So that was the why not now. That is very exciting. So what that'll turn into, I don't know, but it was a great first step. So
rightfully so. We will welcome you on the playground, and you can teach us a lot. I can't wait to see what you would do with kind of this removing of the formula of the visual, the literal visual. And
I tell you what, I'm gonna never shower, and I'm gonna wear the dirtiest clothes all the time. Sometimes I might not even wear clothes at all. It's gonna be great.
It's the sweetest gig. It really is. I moved to the forest, the middle of the forest. I mean, it's pretty cool. I did brush my teeth this morning, which is
well done.
Which is a remarkable improvement.
You did that. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's a true story. So real quick, just to touch on your why not now, is that you have this personal, you have this professional, and I think that's awesome that you mentioned the more being intentional of your time with your family, because a lot of times listeners will listen to the show, and so many people have their big why not now moments, and a lot of them are shifting of a career path, and I think that's intuitive, and that makes a lot of sense, and that's what a lot of the guests talk about is a career path shift. However, this concept of self-care or just taking care of your life and balance is such a good response from you, because I think it will help people understand why not nows can be anything. I mean, really anything. It's not about just business or career, and sometimes it shouldn't be.
And I have this conversation a lot with a lot of other friends of mine who run companies, and it's like at the end of the day, the company's going to be gone. The business at some point I will, and I don't know when that'll be, that I'll actually stop making movies or doing things, but somewhere way down the road, I will probably say I'm going to slow down or I'm going to retire. And you want those people that you love more than anyone to kind of be around. Like, you don't want your kids to just be gone and not want to see you because you never saw them, and you don't want to not have relationships with them. And I think rich relationships with your family, I mean, these are the most important things. And the more that you can turn those, I think, into powerful allies in your personal life, the more powerful allies you'll have in your business life. I think that one begats the other, and one builds on the success of the other. And it's really important to me. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
Absolutely. Are there any tangible things that you're doing to act upon that personal why not now? Or is it more just top of mind?
No phone at the table. That's the biggest one.
Oh, good one. Okay.
Like when you get home, you need to unplug. Like you need to put the phone away. You got to this FOMO that we all have. It's like, you're not going to miss out. There's not that many important texts. There's not that many Twitters. If somebody's calling you and it's that important, then, in an hour or whenever dinner's done, you can go back to it. But I think that just making sure that there's at least some peaceful time where you can be with your family and have a conversation and talk about the day, it matters. I think that we are turning our dinner table and those conversations. It's a hallowed moment to have as a family, and I want my kids to know it's important to me, as well as my wife. And I think that the more that we can kind of just instill those little things of the four of us, this is what is most important in the whole world, is a good message to give.
I love the no-fly zones with your technology. It's a hot topic. I mean, that could be something to explore for a project down the road.
Yeah, another friend of mine does something even cooler, which I haven't gotten quite to yet. Is they have a technological Shabbat where starting every Friday, the phones are off, and phones are off until Saturday. So they get home. So Friday night is all family night. They play games. They don't watch TV. There's no movies. They sit around and have proper family night together. And I think it's awesome.
It's so awesome. And the more people that adopt that, the easier it will become for everyone, right? It's like turn off time, just even in workplace we're not emailing after X o'clock, which some countries have adopted, but very cool. And with your podcast, was it a why not now, or is it still, or is it now your first steps type thing?
I think it's I think that the Why Not Now has been brewing for a couple months around that. And so now we'll see, hopefully the Why Not Now will become now. I think that's the hope. So I believe that we can turn Why Not Now into now. And we should all believe that we can turn our Why Not Nows into now.
Absolutely. So now it's kind of down to logistics, it sounds like. You've kind of gotten through the leap of, is this a viable idea?
Yeah, is it a viable idea? Is it something you can pull off in your time? I mean, because that's the thing is like with everything else. Now I'm adding something else to my. It's like, oh, let me just add something else in the middle of this movie and this TV series. Let me just add something else for me to do, which my wife and kids don't want to hear. But just as long as it doesn't suck away from their time, they won't mind.
One thing this is just a thought starter, and there are such things as bad ideas, but
give me some podcast advice.
This isn't necessarily podcast advice. I'm still a rookie, but I'd be happy to, and I know you need to hop here in a few minutes, but I am happy to share my labor of learning. And I have learned quite a few different things to do, what not to do. But if you were to bridge your two Why Not Nows, Morgan, maybe there's a way to actually include your family into your podcast, or I don't know. And maybe that's an absolute not and a non-starter, but who knows? Maybe there's a way to accomplish both and get super creative there. You'd be the one to do it. So
that's a good idea.
Although your 8-month-old may not have a ton to contribute at the moment, but through you could channel it.
And I don't think my wife wants to show all of her scars. So I don't know. Well, it'll be a tug of war. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, but I think there could be a formula. But rapid fire around quickly.
Okay.
So what are you reading right now, or all-time favorite book?
Right now I'm reading Hillbilly Elegy, as I am a fellow hillbilly from West Virginia, and it's a book that really speaks to me on so many levels. So that's what I'm reading right now. And my favorite book of all time is a book that I read when I was in high school, which is a dream of mine to still turn into a movie, which is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which I feel like every day with everything that's happening, I feel like we're getting closer to this becoming reality.
Awesome. Okay, very good. I'll make sure to link to those in the show notes too. I liked JD's perspective and talk about bubbles, right? I just moved from San Diego urban bubble to South Dakota rural bubble, and it's been fascinating.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful state.
It is gorgeous. Next question, pirates or ninjas? Who's tougher?
Oh my gosh. I think I'd have to go with pirates.
Okay. Do you have any backup for that, or are you just gonna?
But as why pirates are tougher? I mean, I don't know. I feel like ninjas. Ninjas are cool. Ninjas are they're stealth. They're dark. But I feel like pirates just don't give a shit. I feel like pirates, they don't ever bathe. They don't ever brush their teeth. They're just like mean and nasty, and they'll do whatever they can. But they'll stand by their guys. They're all for one and one for all. They're like the Three Musketeers of the sea. It's I don't know. I think pirates.
I love it. I just interviewed this woman who's 101 years old. She was one of the CEOs of Girl Scouts, and her answer to this question, she said, Amy Jo, maybe it's not about which is tougher, but which is making a bigger difference. And I thought it was just such an awesome answer from this woman.
So the question is then which one are making a bigger difference? Because some people would say pirates and others would probably say ninjas. True.
I mean, I could talk about this question all day long, but pirates have more fun too, by the way. So,
I agree.
What keeps you up at night?
My 8-month-old.
Literally. Fair enough. That's a good one.
That's the literal thing that's the real thing that keeps me up at night. But then the other thing is, I guess it is, I think once you have 2 kids, you worry about them. You worry about taking care of them and providing for them. And I think that I feel like I have so many more thoughts, and even I think more now with my second son than even with my first one, of just kind of the future and how do I continue to take care of them and provide for them and what I want for them. I mean, I feel like I have more thoughts about that now than I ever have in my life.
That's fair enough. That's a very common answer among the guests, and I think that's that and how we spend our time. We're being intentional about where are we doing enough. And final question: if you were to give advice to your younger self at any age, which you can choose, what would it be?
I would probably, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I was always a risk taker, but I would go back and I would tell my younger self to take even more chances. Because I would say, take even more chances, take even bigger swings, dream even bigger earlier. I feel like that, I feel like we're so afraid of failure, and especially in America, I feel like there's a big wall that we put mentally around ourselves of what failure represents. And I think that the more that you can encourage yourself and encourage your kids and go back and tell young me, like, to fail bigger earlier is the greatest thing you could do. So that's probably what I would say.
That's a great answer. And thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I could continue for a long time, but I look forward to seeing where you head with your Why Not Nows and following your journey as usual. But it's been fun, Morgan.
Great. It was great talking to you, and I'm going to chase you for that podcast advice. I'm going to need lots.
Sounds good.
Oh, thank you, Angela. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. One of the things that resonated most with me in that conversation with Morgan was when he said, show your scars, be willing to show your scars, and you'll become a better storyteller. And I think that's obviously true intuitively, but sometimes it's much more difficult to actually do it. But becoming vulnerable does make us more impactful, I think, in our storytelling. And shifting gears for a moment, back to this paradigm shift we're seeing in the media. I just wrote an article in the Huffington Post about the first 30 days of the new president in office. And it has really nothing to do with him or politics. It's much more about the shift of media and what we've seen, some really bizarre and crazy things and interesting things that are happening in the media, social media and traditional media. And my background is really marketing and media and social media. So this is something I find so fascinating. And in this article, I just point out some of the things that have happened, and it's mind-blowing, really. We're truly living in a very interesting time, to say the least, and how this shift in sharing our voices and how this shift in media and who is the media is shaping our future. So regardless if that's your area of focus in your career or not, it might be interesting to check out. I want to hear what your Why Not Now is. Please share it with me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Amy Jo Martin. I'll send a signed copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Renegades Write the Rules, to the first 200 people who listen, rate, and leave an honest review of the podcast in iTunes. And you'll also get a free month subscription from our friends at Headspace. This is only available to Why Not Now listeners. Once you've left a rating and review on iTunes, just email your iTunes handle name and your mailing address to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com, and we'll get your package in the mail to you. For detailed show notes, head to amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. That's where you'll find links to things we discussed on the show, special offers, and how you can keep in touch with guests. Hat tip to my buddies Ash and Devin at Rock Salt Music for our tunes today. You just listened to the talented John Coggins in Let's Go and Let It Ride. And a jump high five to my talented husband, Richard Greer, for producing the show and being patient with me. See you next time. Until then, why not now?